There is a question that has echoed through every generation. Why do some people seem to attract divine prosperity, while others, equally faithful, struggle all their lives? It's not chance. It's not luck. And it's not because God loves one more than the other. It's because hidden within the pages of Scripture lies a law, a divine rhythm that governs increase, peace, and lasting wealth. Solomon discovered it, but few ever understood it. He tried to describe it in fragments, in Proverbs, in Ecclesiastes, in the quiet reflections of his later years, but the full law, he never spoke plainly. It was too sacred to shout, and yet, if you listen closely, if you read not only his words but his silences, you begin to hear it, the heartbeat of divine abundance. Before we go deeper, write in the comments, "I am ready for wisdom," because those who prepare their hearts to receive are the ones heaven reveals its secrets to. Imagine Solomon in his palace, surrounded by gold, cedar, and endless servants, yet staring out a window with a heavy heart. He had wealth beyond measure, and still, he realized that riches alone could never satisfy the soul. He once said, "Wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that may be desired are not to be compared to it." That was not poetry. It was confession. Solomon had touched everything men chase after: power, pleasure, possessions, and found them hollow without divine purpose. So he searched deeper. He studied creation, commerce, character, and the ways of men. And through it all, he uncovered a law that few ever perceive. The wealth that lasts is not earned by hands, but attracted by alignment. Alignment between what you believe and what you build. Between how you handle the little and how you are trusted with the much. Between the faith you speak and the actions you live. This was the first part of the hidden law. Not money itself, but harmony with divine order. When a person aligns with God's rhythm, honesty, diligence, generosity, discipline, wealth ceases to be a chase. It becomes a current that finds them. This is why Solomon could say, "The blessing of the Lord makes rich, and he adds no sorrow with it," because when wealth flows from divine rhythm, it carries peace with it. And perhaps that is why so many struggle. They work harder, pray louder, give more, yet remain out of rhythm with God's pattern. They try to force results that only flow through obedience. They hold on to fear, and fear always interrupts divine circulation. Friend, your hands can be full of labor and your heart still empty of peace. Because divine wealth is not something you pursue, it's something you become compatible with. Tonight, as you listen to these words, ask yourself gently, where have I been out of rhythm with heaven? Have I been planting seeds of generosity, but watering them with worry? Have I been asking God to trust me with more, while still mishandling the little I have? This is where Solomon began his revelation. Not with numbers, not with gold, but with order. When your life begins to reflect the values of God's kingdom, prosperity can no longer resist you. If this message is already stirring something in your spirit, type in the comments, "I choose alignment," because agreement is the first doorway to revelation. The second part of Solomon's hidden law begins quietly, not with thunder, not with divine spectacle, but with a question God still asks to this day. What will you do with what I've already placed in your hands? Every season of lack, every delay, every closed door, they're not always punishment. Sometimes they're a test of stewardship, because God never releases abundance into hands that ignore the little. He multiplies what is honored. Solomon understood this law better than anyone. He had seen kings rise and fall, nations prosper and collapse, not because of power, but because of what they did with the small beginnings. So he wrote in Proverbs 10:4, "He who works with a diligent hand becomes rich, but the lazy hand leads to poverty." This was not just practical advice, it was divine economy. The rhythm of heaven applied to human life. Wealth in God's kingdom is never random. It is the echo of responsibility. When you take care of the seed, heaven trusts you with the harvest. When you water the small idea, God sends rain over the bigger dream. When you choose to be faithful in what seems ordinary, You position yourself for the extraordinary, and that's why Jesus later said, "Whoever is faithful in little will be faithful in much." Because divine promotion doesn't begin in public stages. It begins in private faithfulness. Maybe you've been asking for more opportunity, more finances, more recognition. And heaven has been asking back, what have you done with what I've already given? Not to shame you, but to align you. Because the blessing you're praying for may already be hidden in the responsibilities you've been overlooking. Take a moment and think about it. There's something in your life right now, small, almost invisible, that carries the code of multiplication. It could be a skill you've buried, a relationship you've taken for granted, a talent you've dismissed because the world called it ordinary. But nothing God places in your life is ordinary. Everything carries potential when handled with gratitude. The widow with the jar of oil didn't need a miracle from outside. She needed revelation from inside. The prophet didn't give her something new. He simply opened her eyes to what she already had. And when she valued it, when she poured it, heaven multiplied it. That's stewardship. That's the hidden law at work. Solomon watched this pattern repeat in nature. He studied the ants and wrote, "Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise." He marveled that even creatures with no ruler or guide still gathered in the right season, stored for the future, and lived in continuous provision. He realized then that divine wisdom is not found in noise. It's hidden in order. That everything God blesses, He first organizes, and that chaos always precedes poverty. So before God multiplies, He measures. Before He increases, He instructs. And before He blesses, He builds the character to hold the blessing. Friend, divine wealth is not about numbers in an account. It's about becoming a person heaven can trust with overflow. If God gave you more today, would your habits protect it or destroy it? Would you plant it or waste it? Would you see it as yours or as His? Because stewardship is not ownership, it's partnership. It's managing heaven's resources with earth's responsibility. This is the reason Solomon became the richest man on earth. Not because he asked for gold, he never did. He asked for wisdom, and wisdom taught him how to handle wealth without being handled by it. So many people pray for abundance, but never learn to govern what they already possess. They ask for increase while leaking blessings through worry, impulsiveness, and comparison. They want multiplication without management, and that violates the rhythm of divine wealth. Because God does not reward emotion, He rewards structure. When you create order, heaven sends overflow. Look around your life right now. Where could you bring order? Maybe it's your finances, your schedule, your discipline, your words. Every area you align becomes a channel for blessing. Write in the comments, "I will create order where God has placed me." Because order is an invitation for God to move. Now listen carefully to this truth. Every time you honor what you have, you invite heaven to multiply it. Every time you bless what seems too small, you whisper to God, "I'm ready for more." The miracle begins not when you receive, but when you recognize. Recognition is the seed of multiplication. Remember the feeding of the 5,000. Jesus didn't panic about the lack. He looked up, gave thanks, and broke what was in His hands. Gratitude turned insufficiency into abundance. That's the hidden formula. That's what Solomon lived by. The grateful heart sees multiplication where others see limitation. So if you're listening tonight feeling like you have too little, hear me, you already carry enough for your next miracle. Your task is not to complain about what's missing, but to bless what's present. To polish your gift, to refine your craft, to wake up each morning and treat your current position as the training ground for your promotion. Because God watches how you handle now to decide what He can trust you with. Next, every small act of faithfulness is a rehearsal for overflow, and every act of neglect delays it. This is why Solomon said, "Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might." He knew that divine multiplication is activated by excellence. When you give your best to what looks small, God gives His best to what seems impossible. This is the second law of divine wealth. Stewardship precedes multiplication. If you guard this truth in your heart, you'll never chase money again. Money will start finding you because heaven does not respond to desperation. It responds to preparation. If this revelation is speaking to you, write in the comments, "I will be faithful with what I have," because the declaration of faith is the doorway of manifestation. There is a river that runs through every story of abundance in the Bible. Sometimes you see it as literal water, flowing from Eden, spilling into the Jordan, parting at the Red Sea. Other times it's invisible, the river of generosity that keeps moving through open hearts. And Solomon understood something that most of us forget. What stops flowing soon starts dying. He watched merchants hoard gold until it lost value, farmers stockpile grain until it spoiled, and kings clutch power until it crushed them. So he wrote, "There is one who scatters yet increases more, and there is one who withholds more than is right, but it leads to poverty." Proverbs 11:24. That was his revelation of divine circulation. The law is simple but sacred. Whatever you refuse to release cannot multiply. When you grip your resources with fear, you strangle the very flow God intended to use to bless you. But when you open your hands, you open the river. Think of a river that runs through the mountains. The moment it stops flowing, it stagnates. Algae grows, mosquitoes swarm, the water turns sour. But as long as it keeps moving, always giving, always receiving, it remains fresh and alive. That's how divine wealth works. It was never meant to sit in accounts. It was meant to move through assignments. Solomon saw this in the temple. Every offering brought in faith didn't diminish Israel. It expanded it. Each sacrifice became seed for future harvests. Walls rebuilt, families restored, nations blessed. He realized that generosity was not loss. It was spiritual investment. And that's why he could write, "Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of your increase. Then your barns will be filled with plenty." Notice the sequence. Honor first, increase second. Give, and the river responds with rain. Friend, if you've been holding tightly because you're afraid to lose, hear this truth. Fear is the dams that block blessing. Faith is the current that carries it. When you release even a little in faith, you prove to heaven that you trust the source more than the supply. And trust is what keeps the river flowing. Write this in the comments as a sign of agreement. I am a river, not a reservoir. Let those words reorder your thinking, because a reservoir collects until it bursts, but a river flows until it blesses. Solomon learned that every time he gave to build the temple, his personal wealth grew instead of shrinking. Because you cannot outgive a God who created the universe with overflow. When you bless others, you step into God's nature, and his nature is expansion. The enemy whispers, "If you give, you'll have less." But heaven answers, "If you release, you'll make room for more." That's why Jesus said, "Give, and it will be given to you, pressed down, shaken together and running over." He wasn't promising transactions. He was describing traction. When you give, you move in rhythm with God himself. Think about the ocean. Every wave that recedes returns stronger. Every tide that goes out draws fresh water back in. That's circulation. That's how heaven operates. So when you help someone in need, when you speak life instead of judgment, when you invest time, kindness, and resources in others, you're not just doing a good deed. You're keeping the river alive. Maybe you're listening right now and you feel dry inside. You've been saving, planning, working, but nothing seems to move. Ask yourself, where did the flow stop? Was there a moment you started giving less, trusting less, believing less? The river of God doesn't stop because he changed. It stops when fear builds a wall. But the good news is this: rivers never die. They just wait for the barriers to break. The moment you open your heart again, the water finds its course. Solomon's third law was a law of movement. He taught that the wise don't just accumulate, they circulate. Because in circulation, there's creation. When resources move, they multiply. When love moves, it multiplies. When wisdom moves, it multiplies. That's why holding back is the first symptom of poverty, but letting go is the first sign of abundance. So release what you can today. A word, a helping hand, a seed of kindness, a prayer. Because every time you send something out with faith, heaven marks it for return. Father, teach us to flow like you flow, to give without calculating, to trust without fear, to see every act of generosity as a form of worship. Let us be rivers of your grace, carrying hope to the dry places around us. Because the wealth you entrust to us is never for possession, it's for purpose. And as we move in this flow, let miracles move toward us. Let doors open not by force, but by faith. Let the river of divine abundance sweep through every listener's life right now. If you feel this truth rising in your spirit, type in the comments, "I choose to flow with God," because agreement creates momentum, and momentum keeps the river alive. There comes a point in every pursuit of prosperity where the greatest battle is no longer in your wallet. It's in your mind. Solomon reached that point. After wealth, after wisdom, after fame, he looked inward and realized, if the soul is in chaos, every blessing becomes a burden. He once wrote, "Better a dry crust with peace than a house full of feasting and strife," because he had seen mansions filled with noise and hearts empty of rest. He had met rulers with gold in their vaults, but storms in their thoughts. He understood the painful irony. You can possess everything outside and lose everything inside. That is why the fourth law of divine wealth is the law of inner order and peace. It is the understanding that abundance cannot remain where anxiety reigns. Peace is not the result of wealth. It is the foundation that sustains it. Solomon's throne was made of ivory and gold, yet some nights he could not sleep. The weight of decisions, the noise of voices, the pressure of leadership, they robbed his rest. So he turned again to prayer and wrote, "In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety." He discovered that divine peace is not silence of sound. It's silence of struggle. It's when your heart stops wrestling with tomorrow, because it trusts the one who already holds it. When your thoughts no longer fight for control, and your soul finally breathes, that is the true wealth no market can measure. Friend, the world teaches you to chase increase. Heaven teaches you to guard inner order, because God will never fill a cup that's still trembling. He will calm the storm first, then pour the blessing. Maybe that's why you've felt delays in your life, not because you're disqualified, but because God is still bringing order within you. He's teaching you patience before promotion, discipline before abundance, peace before overflow, because what you build in chaos will always collapse. But what you build in calm becomes eternal. Look around your life. How much noise do you allow daily? The endless scrolling, the comparison, the worry about what's next. They are thieves of divine rhythm. Solomon warned, "Guard your heart, for from it flow the springs of life." He didn't say guard your money, your job, or your reputation. He said guard your heart, because the condition of your inner world determines the stability of your outer one. If your thoughts are scattered, your direction will be too. If your emotions rule you, your vision will shrink. That's why peace is not optional. It's strategy. It's how you keep the presence of God in motion within you. When your inner world is still, heaven can trust you with motion on the outside. That's why Jesus could sleep through a storm. He carried calm that conquered chaos. And that same calm is available to you. Take a deep breath right now. Let the air remind you that provision still flows, that even when the world rushes, heaven never panics. Peace is the proof that you believe God is still in control. Solomon's palace had guards on every gate, but he learned the greatest security system was peace of mind. He wrote, "A heart at peace gives life to the body." Notice, not gold, not power, but peace. Because peace strengthens, heals, multiplies focus, and lengthens life. So ask yourself, what has been stealing my peace? Maybe it's a relationship that drains you. Maybe it's fear of the future. Maybe it's the pressure to prove your worth. Whatever it is, release it tonight. Nothing you lose by protecting your peace is ever a real loss. When you choose peace, you're choosing partnership with God, because He only speaks clearly in stillness. He is not found in the earthquake or the fire, but in the gentle whisper And the whisper carries wealth greater than any coin. The world celebrates noise, but heaven rewards quiet strength. Every time you pause to pray instead of panic, you invest in unseen dividends. Every time you forgive instead of fight, you deposit peace that will yield joy later. This is the economy of the Spirit. What you release in peace returns as provision. Friend, you cannot control every storm around you, but you can control the temperature of your soul. You can wake up tomorrow and choose stillness over striving. Because peace is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of perspective. It's remembering that God has already gone before you. Write in the comments, "My peace is my power." Because that declaration shifts your atmosphere. It tells anxiety that its season is over. The fourth law of divine wealth is simple but sacred. Inner order sustains outer prosperity. When your thoughts, emotions, and habits align with God's peace, everything you build begins to last. Your creativity expands, your relationships heal, your decisions sharpen, your blessings multiply quietly and steadily without adding sorrow. So tonight, may your mind rest, may your heart exhale, and may you remember that no treasure is greater than peace, guarded by wisdom. If this truth is resonating in your spirit, type in the comments, "I choose peace over pressure," because confession seals revelation. And when you confess peace, heaven confirms it. There comes a moment in every journey toward abundance when God turns the question back toward you and asks, "What will remain when you are gone?" Because divine wealth was never meant to end with your comfort. It was meant to continue through your contribution. This is the fifth law of Solomon's revelation, the law of legacy and purpose. You see, Solomon never measured success by what he possessed, but by what would outlive him. The temple he built, the wisdom he wrote, the generations he inspired, that was his real treasure. He said, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." He wasn't only speaking of money, he was speaking of mindset, of faith, of principles that ripple across decades. Because every time you live with integrity, every time you walk in wisdom, you are building foundations under someone else's feet. Legacy begins when you realize that your life is not about accumulation, it's about assignment. You were sent here not only to prosper, but to prepare the path for others. Every blessing God places in your hands carries a purpose beyond you. And when purpose leads, prosperity follows. Think of Solomon's request at the beginning of his reign. He could have asked for victory, long life, or riches. But he said, "Give your servant an understanding heart, that I may lead your people." He asked for wisdom, not for himself, but for his assignment. That was the moment heaven opened the vaults of abundance. Because when your reason to prosper is to serve, God trusts you with more than you could ever imagine. Legacy is not built in speeches. It's built in stewardship. Every decision you make, every word you speak, is writing a chapter in someone else's future. When you walk in faith, someone watching learns courage. When you forgive, someone nearby learns freedom. When you give, someone who had lost hope begins to believe again. You are not just a receiver of blessings, you are a relay of them. Friend, wealth that stops with you dies with you, but wealth that flows through you lives forever. So ask yourself, what will I be remembered for? For the things I owned or the lives I lifted? Solomon's life teaches us this truth. God doesn't just bless you to increase your comfort, He blesses you to expand His kingdom. Every act of generosity, every prayer, every lesson you leave behind becomes a seed of transformation planted in eternity. Your words have weight beyond this world. Someone may remember your kindness long after your name fades, and that memory can lead them back to God. That is divine legacy, when your life becomes a mirror of His character. Maybe you've thought your influence is small. Maybe you've believed your impact is insignificant. But the kingdom of heaven is built through small ripples that become mighty waves. The prayer you whisper today could protect a generation tomorrow. The wisdom you share could shift a destiny you'll never see. Legacy is not measured in followers. It's measured in faithfulness. Solomon knew this near the end of his days. He had built cities, written proverbs, amassed treasures beyond counting. But in Ecclesiastes, he confessed, "Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man." That was the conclusion of all his searching. That was the heartbeat of purpose. He had learned that wealth without worship is emptiness, and success without service is slavery. True fulfillment comes when what you create begins to bless others. Long after you're gone, write in the comments, "My wealth will serve a purpose." Because when you speak it, you invite heaven to design it. And remember this final truth of Solomon's wisdom. When you live for purpose, you never lose, you multiply meaning. And now, after walking through Solomon's hidden laws, alignment, stewardship, circulation, peace, and legacy, we arrive at the quiet summit of his revelation, the place where wisdom no longer shouts but whispers. Because once you've understood all that wealth truly means, you stop asking, "How much can I gain?" and start asking, "How much can I give?" You stop chasing miracles and begin becoming one. That's where Solomon ended his journey, not in gold, not in power, but in awe. He looked back over a life of glory and regret and realized that every treasure had a purpose, only if it brought him closer to God. So he wrote with trembling hands, "All is vanity, except to fear God and keep his commandments." Friend, that is the hidden law of divine wealth in one breath. To walk with God so deeply that your blessings no longer define you, your obedience does. To have so much peace that no storm can steal it. To give so freely that no fear can limit it. To live so wisely that no darkness can deceive it. That's the true inheritance of the kingdom. That's the treasure Solomon discovered when everything else faded. Take a moment. Close your eyes wherever you are. Breathe slowly. Feel the presence of peace surrounding you. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are being prepared. Every delay has been a classroom. Every burden has been a lesson. Every struggle has been the soil for your next season of abundance. If you've walked through hardship, through lack, through questions that kept you awake at night, this is what heaven wants you to hear right now. You were never being punished. You were being positioned to handle what's coming, positioned to hold blessings without breaking, positioned to carry wisdom that can guide others out of darkness. The pain that humbled you has become the foundation of your peace. The scarcity that tested you has refined your stewardship, and the waiting that broke you has deepened your worship. Now you are ready, not just to receive wealth, but to sustain it. Look at your hands for a moment. Everything you touch can become holy when handled with gratitude. Your work, your ideas, your resources, even your pain, God can use it all. Divine wealth is not about what you hold. It's about who holds you. And when God becomes your source, lack loses its voice forever. Father, we thank you for every listener under the sound of this message, for every heart that has walked through the valley and still chosen faith, for every person who has lost much but never lost hope. Tonight, breathe fresh life into their spirit. Remind them that they are not abandoned. They are aligned. Lift the burden of fear. Restore divine order. Open the river of circulation again, and let their peace return like morning light. Let their work prosper, their mind rest, their faith rise, and their purpose shine, because you have called them not to survive, but to overflow. If this message has touched your heart, write in the comments, "I am ready to live with divine wisdom," because every word you type in faith becomes a seed in your future. Let's fill the comments with declarations of purpose, with gratitude, with surrender, because faith grows in community, and every confession written here becomes an echo in heaven. As you finish this video, don't rush away. Sit in the stillness for a few seconds. Let the peace of God settle over you like soft rain. Remember, the law of divine wealth isn't something you learn once. It's something you live daily. When you walk in alignment, practice stewardship, flow in generosity, protect your peace, and live for legacy, you will never chase abundance again. Abundance will chase you, The message of Solomon still speaks across time. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, because wisdom is not just knowledge, it's divine rhythm. And when your life begins to dance to that rhythm, you will see blessings follow your footsteps. So go, walk with peace, live with purpose, and let every decision you make this week be a reflection of the wisdom God has planted in your heart. Your story isn't over. Your breakthrough hasn't passed. You're only just beginning to walk in the rhythm of divine wealth. If this message moved you, write in the comments, "I am walking in God's rhythm," and share this video with someone who needs to remember that peace and purpose are worth more than gold, because the greatest wealth you will ever carry is the wisdom that can never be taken away.